So this is one of the other bishops. This is the Bishop of Bristol. So this is the Reverend Vivienne Faull, right? Now she's turned down this basically she's denied a retirement action, right, for this Reverend Sue Parfitt. Reverend Sue Parfitt is one of the activist clergy who is retired, and apparently she engaged in criminal damage, right? Now this bishop has refused some retirement actions. But the thing is this, right? I don't think this Reverend Vivienne Faull, understands the law. But it's not just her. It's actually the activists themselves. The activists themselves do not understand the law or know what law they're using or doing. And even Rowan Williams, who is now a fellow at Cambridge, Rowan Williams is advocating these protesters. He's advocating their rights, and he's even standing up for Roger Hallam. He's had an interview with Roger Hallam, but he's not actually done any action or intervention using powers. He's only spoken out for Roger Hallam. Roger Hallam's in prison now. Now, this is the thing. The bishops are like, they're basically all these reverends, including some of the reverends who are engaged in protesting, right? The actual bishops, believe it or not, right, have actually got some powers and authority and jurisdiction given in law. You won't find it in like the Criminal Damage Act. You won't find it in the Criminal Procedure Rules. You ain't going to find it in the Magistrates Court Act. But they are given powers, right? You've got the Justices of the Peace Act, right? For example, the bishop's powers comes from the House of Lords. Now, I know that the Constitutional Reform Act 2005 puts the Supreme Court as the Court of Appeal, but none of those Supreme Court judges are Lords spiritual, right? I can guarantee you that. They're not. It's Madam Cobweb. She's not a Lord spiritual, right? So Gordon Brown, in government, made that Constitutional Reform Act, right? It doesn't cover everything. There are acts of law which are overriding, which is like the overriding objectives in the criminal procedure rules. When you're claiming rights, it's overriding. You can claim it in any proceedings, right? The Lords, the House of Lords, still have a jurisdictive authority and can make orders and give orders, just like in Parliament. Because Parliament put through Parliament passed an action to have those post office workers' convictions overturned. It got passed through Parliament, right? It got put by MPs and put through Parliament and the House of Lords, right? That was a criminal matter. And, John Beswick and Henry Burton had convictions overturned from Parliament petitions, right? Now, the Petitions Committee is lying, right? It's not. You don't just have to appeal through the Constitutional Reform Act because you've got the right of free, open subject, and that cannot be overridden. But let's strip it. We need to go back down to this criminal damage issue, right? Firstly, before we even get into any constitutional law, just going with all the modern law that's in use now, to start with, I don't think the Bishop of Bristol knows the law to start with. And I don't think she knows the law that Sue Parfitt doesn't know the law either. And I don't think Gail Bradbrook does, because they're all claiming they're being made to plea. They're being made to... Some of them were acquitted at Manchester Salford. Some of them were acquitted at Manchester Salford for, acting reasonably, right? By, some of these actions at museums on paintings and so forth. That's wrong. They were actually acquitted by a court, but it's still wrong. It isn't right. It's wrong. Even the ones who are acquitted, because they're being made to defend a criminal charge. To start with, a lot of these actions and a lot of the things that the protesters are doing qualify as an advertisement, and they are legally defined as an advertisement when you are installing it or promoting it, whether it is like a model, a representation in public, or a sign or whatever. It can qualify as an advertisement, and a lot of it is defacement, not damage, in law. In law. None of the criminal lawyers are touching or opening or looking at the Control of Advertisements Act because they don't know it and they haven't learned it. And that act has a part in it which tells you to use any enactment in the activities you're doing if an enactment is directly applicable, which is the right to petition, the 1688 Bill of Rights. That is the act which says you can't be prosecuted. And in that Class F, it clearly supports that by giving you consent and permission to do adverts if it is Class F. You've got consent and permission to install and do adverts, particularly if it's public-owned property. And even if it's private-owned property, and even if it's not an advert, even if it's criminal damage, privileges can be used for criminal damage in the Criminal Damage Act. It's not criminal damage when you use privileges. You don't defend the charge. You don't plead guilty or not guilty because it's not in the jurisdiction of those courts, and you're not liable for criminal offences. You're only liable for civil damages, which is in the 1689 Claim of Right Act, which means that there can be someone, the owner of whoever's property you damaged can fine the person or the campaign for costs, damages, but most of them are insured. But it's not criminal liability. And they decided that in the Criminal Damage Act. They decided that in the Criminal Damage Act. It was decided that you can have privileges over criminal damage. You don't have to explain them because you don't even go into why you did it or whatever. The basis is in Lord Hanningfield. If you're doing it for a political cause, if the political cause is evident, then there is one. And they can't touch on those matters. That's the Hanningfield basis. It can't be wrong because it's been put through the court at Southwark, right? It either applies or it doesn't. But besides the point, many of these campaign groups it is petitioning. It's not this peaceful protest business. Peaceful protest is if an ice cream van refuses to sell ice cream and everyone's in a park and then 100 people are annoyed that it won't sell ice cream and they all crowd around the ice cream van and they say, right, sell us ice cream now, right? And then they start getting angry and then the police come and they say, right, get out of the park now, everyone. And they write out a dispersal order, right? And they move everyone off the park. There's no political cause. There is no cause of church, state or law, right? And at the boundary of the park, the people will protest and say, we want to go back onto the park, right? And they might hold signs up, say, let us back on the park, right? They aren't using any powers. There's no powers, right? They've got the right of freedom of expression, freedom of, all of those articles in the Human Rights Act and the European Conventions are... all citizens have got those. Now, if anyone attacks them or uses force against those people, they can use equal or reasonable force to defend themselves, right? But if the police put that dispersal order on there, right, they're not using any powers to go on back on that park, right? They can protest, right, peacefully, But if the police use force, then they can use equal. They don't have to be peaceful. If the police use force against them, right? If they're not doing anything wrong, right? Then they can use force equal to the police's if the police are breaking the law. Now, that is peaceful protesting or picketing, like staff picketing a boss or employer. You aren't using any powers or rights other than your human rights, which are just going about your normal business, right? When the police make the order. Now, if you have a cause to the Parliament of England, which you are pursuing with people consented to it officially, right, which you want the Parliament to act in, right, it helps if you've got a petition written down, because this is why the police have to write out a special order to say that they're putting a Section 42 down. They have to put it in writing, okay? If you've got a petition, you can prove what you're doing, but in the 1661 Act, you don't have to write it down, but there are various resolutions of Parliament. But, you know, this is when we're going back to Magna Carta, but I don't want to go on to Magna Carta at the moment. We're talking about the actual right when you're using it. These campaign groups are doing petitions to Parliament, and they are using powers. It's under the authority and jurisdiction of the Parliament, because you're bringing a case to the Parliament, and it's not for the courts, right? You're not liable for criminal activity. The Criminal Damage Act says that you can use privileges for that act, criminal damage, right? You're not a criminal. And if there's any damage and anyone wants to claim, they can bring a civil suit, right? But most of them are insured anyway. Pay the deposit, whatever the judge says. But they're insured. It's third party. It wasn't an insurance scam, right? This is it. You can't be prosecuted. And this is in the 1688 Bill of Rights, right to petition, and the Claim of Right Act 1689. You can't be imprisoned, and in Magna Carta, right? And this is what Sue, I don't think she understands or knows. But this is the thing. Also in the Magna Carta, they've claimed that they've repealed the House of Lords privileges when they haven't, because the confirmation of the Charters 1297 Act says that they can't be repealed or changed, and they're still opening Parliament with those privileges, and they're even claiming them into effect when Parliament's opening, right? Now, this is important. Now, the thing is, right, because if this was nothing to do with matters of church, state of law, which you are petitioning Parliament to act on, right? Fair enough. If you're protesting an ice cream van in a park and there's criminal damage, if you're protesting your boss in picketing on strike, that's different. If you have got matters of church, state or law to the Parliament, right, you are using the 1688 Bill of Rights and Magna Carta, and these are great charters. Now, the justices cannot make orders against those great charters. It's illegal. They're void. They're void and null. It says in the confirmation of the Charters Act, says they are void and null of no effect, right? So they really, Hallam and the others are political prisoners, but no one's going into the detail about it, and it doesn't help the general public support them if they're not educated on it. It's not human rights. It's not civil liberties, because civil liberties are when you're being civil, right? You're not being civil. You're using powers, right? The police is not being civil when he's chasing a criminal and kicking a door down, right? He's using powers, right? They are using powers. Now, this is where the bishops come in, right? It says, how do you get these charters enforced and these fundamental rights in constitutional law? There is a process for it, because if they're not being enforced, who is it who isn't enforcing it? It can only be the judges, right? Councillors, judges or ministers. And there's a definition of this in law. It's defined in law and described and explained in the 1688 Bill of Rights and in the confirmation of the Charters. It says if the liberties are subverted, the freedoms and liberties are subverted, it is an evil act. by the justices or the ministers or the councillors, right? Subverting the liberties of the realm is an evil act. And in the confirmation of the charters, it says that if there is any violation of those main charters by the justices, right, it says that the legal responsibility is with the bishop in that act of law. Why? Because the justices are breaking the law, not the campaigners. The justices are breaking the law. The justices are not applying the rights. Now, that means the justices are doing evil acts. Now, how do you get them to do it? Well, they've got a judicial complaints office, and the Lady Chief Justice is in charge of it. But she's not Lord Spiritual. She is not Lord Spiritual, and neither is Lady Cobweb, right? Not three of them. None of those justices in that Supreme Court are Lord Spiritual, right? Or not the three that I've seen, right? The bishops in the House of Lords are personally, legally required to compel the justices, right? Because they need cleansing. The Crown Prosecution Service have an entire section on cleansing. It means that confessions, it means they've got to admit that they've done wrong, okay? Now, I don't think Rowan Williams actually understands this. If he is a bishop still, he's got powers, but he's not exercising them. He isn't exercising them. He's done a few interviews. He said, I don't agree with all this arresting protesters, but how is Roger Hallam still in prison? Why has Rowan Williams not gone into the High Court and put his hand on the head of the justice and baptized him, and with the holy power of God compelled him of evil? Now, only the Catholic Church still do exorcisms, right? Only the Catholic Church have special departments and training to exorcise evil spirits, right? They don't do it in the Protestant Church, but they've got authority and they have cleansing, right? Now, someone is going to have to do it. Whether it's going up to the justices, writing a letter to them, or going to see them, it's not Chris Packham. It's not Dale Vince. Rowan Williams is pretending that he cares. He's pretending that he's standing up for protesters. He's not exercising a power or jurisdiction, because either he doesn't know he's got it, or he doesn't understand. Well, he used to be the Archbishop of Canterbury himself, so if he doesn't understand it, I don't know who does, right? Rowan Williams is meant to go to see the justice or write to him who put Hallam in prison, and he's meant to lay his hand on him and say, do you have anything to confess about the upholding of the Great Charter, Magna Carta, and the Charter of Liberties, and the Bill of Rights, with Roger Hallam, who was planning to put an advertisement up through the Control of Advertisements Act, which is defined as an advert, and who is got causes to the Parliament, which don't have criminal liability under privileges of Parliament. And in fact, these bishops are members of Parliament. Where's the Privileges Committee? I actually think that this whole church is got a serious problem. Maybe it is because maybe they're dismantling the church. I think by letting these women in, who don't really know what they're doing. I think the church is being stripped down and turned into like some kind of pageant, right? Rowan Williams isn't serious. He's not for real. He either does not know law, and he's meant to have advisors, and he's meant to have... It was Cambridge University Press that published the full Thomas Erskine May book, which says that we do have privileges when we're petitioning Parliament. So, you know, Rowan Williams, if he hadn't got that book, I don't know who has, you know. Now, these people are not meant to take sides in a petition dispute of church, state or law. They're meant to be impartial, and they've got functions when certain laws aren't being followed by the justices. It's not actually that complicated if you read the Act and look at it, and this is all like live. These are all the parts that aren't even questionable, are all live, you know. And there's no point telling defend your juries because, you know, like Tim Spears, he's just, oh, I don't understand it, it's going to the top of my head. Why are they making videos? They're making videos. They're complaining. They're saying, oh, we've got political prisoners. Oh, it's defend our juries. Oh, it's Lex, you know. But why not actually, you know, say the actual... You don't need to actually be a qualified lawyer. There is no defence. There is no plea guilty or not guilty. Nothing. There is a claim of right. And the actual justices are committing, in law, defined in English active legislation, which is on legislation.gov, published, live, not repealed. It says this is act of evil, and it requires a bishop to cleanse them. And if you think that's all mumbo jumbo, why have the Crown Prosecution Service themselves in their own website and policy got an entire section on cleansing? Right? Cleansing. The entire Crown Prosecution Service needs cleansing. The justices need cleansing. And the Lady Chief Justice, she's not qualified to do it because she is not Lord Spiritual. And unfortunately, it's getting questionable now if Rowan Williams is fit for purpose. It's getting questionable if the Archbishop of Canterbury is fit for purpose. It's getting questionable if this woman is fit for purpose or not, or biased. And it's getting questionable if the Bishop of London is fit for purpose or not, or any of their research. They've got parliamentary and legal researchers. They've got staff. They've got people in position who are meant to, you know, check it out. I checked it out. I know, I understand it. It's not wrong, or I won't be making this video.